Lisa Thompson had always been accustomed to luxury, power, and getting exactly what she wanted. As a highly successful business executive, she spent her days orchestrating multi-million-dollar real estate deals and her nights indulging in the finest restaurants, her lifestyle a testament to years of ambition and control. To her, the world was a place she could bend to her will, and she had little patience for anything or anyone that disrupted her carefully curated life. One rainy afternoon, Lisa found herself boarding a flight from New York to Los Angeles. She had, as always, paid extra for a first-class ticket, expecting an experience of seamless comfort and exclusivity. She carried herself with an air of superiority, her manicured fingers tapping impatiently against her phone screen as she walked down the jet bridge. The idea of spending several hours confined to an airplane was already an inconvenience, but she took solace in knowing that at least she would be surrounded by individuals of her caliber. As she reached her seat, she paused, her expression shifting from mild annoyance to open displeasure. Sitting next to her was a man in a military uniform. His fatigues, though clean, were slightly wrinkled, and his boots bore the signs of long marches and hard use. He sat quietly, his hands folded in his lap, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Lisa wrinkled her nose in distaste. "Oh, great," she muttered under her breath, just loud enough for the soldier to hear. Sergeant Daniel Harper heard her, but he chose to ignore it. He was used to people having mixed reactions to the military. Instead of responding, he simply nodded politely and adjusted his seatbelt. Lisa, with an exaggerated sigh, sank into her seat, her body language making it clear that she found the seating arrangement unacceptable. Not long after takeoff, Lisa signaled for the flight attendant. Her voice, sharp and filled with irritation, cut through the ambient hum of the aircraft. "Excuse me," she said, "can I switch seats?" The flight attendant blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we're fully booked." Lisa scoffed. "I paid for first class to be comfortable, not to sit next to—" She gestured vaguely toward Sergeant Harper, her words dripping with disdain. The flight attendant's cheeks flushed, her professional demeanor wavering. "Ma'am, this gentleman has every right to sit here. Please be respectful." Before Lisa could respond, Sergeant Harper turned toward her, his voice calm and steady. "Ma'am, I assure you, I won't be any bother to you. I'm just heading home after a long deployment." Lisa rolled her eyes. "Whatever," she muttered, crossing her arms. The remainder of the flight was tense. Lisa made it a point to avoid any interaction with Sergeant Harper. Whenever the flight attendant passed by, she spoke loudly about how ridiculous it was to seat a common soldier next to someone of her stature. Other passengers exchanged glances, some shaking their heads at her behavior, but Sergeant Harper remained composed, his gaze fixed out the window, lost in thought. By the time the plane landed in Los Angeles late that night, Lisa couldn't get off fast enough. She didn't spare Sergeant Harper a second glance, eager to put the unpleasant experience behind her. As she stepped into the comfort of her private car, she dismissed the encounter from her mind, confident that it had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience in her otherwise perfect life. The next morning, as Lisa sipped her imported coffee in her lavish penthouse, she scrolled through the news on her phone. It was a routine she rarely deviated from, catching up on headlines that rarely had any real impact on her life. But that morning was different. Her breath caught in her throat as she read the headline, "American Hero Dies Saving Dozens in Tragic Explosion at LAX." Her hands trembled as she clicked on the article. The story detailed how an off-duty soldier, Sergeant Daniel Harper, had spotted an unattended bag in the busy arrivals terminal at LAX. While others ignored it, he had sensed something was wrong. As he approached, he saw the wires, the unmistakable sign of a bomb. Without hesitation, Sergeant Harper had shouted for people to get down, rushing toward the bag to shield as many people as possible from the blast. The explosion took his life instantly, but because of his bravery, dozens were spared. Lisa's vision blurred as she reread the name, Sergeant Daniel Harper, the same man she had insulted, belittled, and dismissed just hours before, and she hadn't even said thank you. A crushing weight of guilt settled in her chest. The memory of her sharp words on the plane echoed in her mind. Oh, great. I paid for first class to be comfortable, not to sit next to him. Tears streamed down her face as she read further. He had a wife, a young daughter. He had been coming home to surprise them, to reunite with the family he had spent months away from. Instead, he had given his life to protect strangers, to protect people like her. Lisa set her phone down, her hand shaking. Never in her life had she felt so ashamed. That night's sleep eluded her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sergeant Harper's face. The quiet dignity in his expression, the way he had chosen not to engage in her cruelty. She saw his widow receiving the devastating news, his daughter waiting for a father who would never come home. By morning, she knew she had to do something. Lisa made a substantial donation to a military charity in Sergeant Harper's name, but even that felt hollow. She wrote a letter to his family, apologizing for how she had treated him, though she doubted words could ever be enough. And for the first time in years, she truly reflected on the person she had become. Because of a hero she had once looked down on, she vowed to change. And she never forgot Sergeant Daniel Harper. The days that followed were filled with introspection. Lisa couldn't shake the image of Sergeant Harper from her mind. The guilt was a constant weight, pressing down on her with every passing hour. She realized that donating money wasn't enough. Writing a letter wasn't enough. She needed to do more. After a restless night, she booked a flight to Texas, Sergeant Harper's hometown. The town was nothing like the bustling cities Lisa was used to. It was small, quiet, with a warmth she wasn't accustomed to. As she walked through the streets, she felt out of place in her designer heels and tailored coat. With her heart pounding, she arrived at a modest house. The American flag waved gently in the wind. She took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened, revealing a woman in her mid-30s. Her eyes, tired and swollen from grief, met Lisa's. "Can I help you?" the woman asked hesitantly. Lisa swallowed hard. "My name is Lisa Thompson. I was on the plane with your husband. I treated him terribly, and I need to say, I'm sorry." Emily Harper studied her for a moment before stepping aside. "Come in." Inside, the house was warm and welcoming, but grief lingered in the air. Toys were scattered across the floor, and in the corner a small girl with Sergeant Harper's eyes played quietly. Lisa's heart clenched. Sitting at the kitchen table, Lisa poured out everything: how she had acted, the cruel words she had spoken, and the deep regret that now consumed her. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but she didn't look angry. Instead, she reached across the table and took Lisa's hand. "My husband never held grudges," she said softly. "If he were here, he'd tell you it's never too late to change." Lisa's tears fell freely. "I don't deserve forgiveness." Emily squeezed her hand. "Maybe not. But Daniel would have given it to you anyway." Lisa left Texas forever changed. She established the Harper Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting veterans and their families. She personally attended every event, listening to soldiers' stories, ensuring their sacrifices were recognized. Years later, as Lisa boarded another flight, she found herself seated next to a young soldier. This time she smiled, warmly. "First time flying?" she asked. The soldier nodded.
Lisa extended her hand. "Before anything else, let me say thank you for your service." And she meant it.